Today's episode of the Spring Hills podcast, we're doing something.
Hey, I got it.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Hey, Spring Hills, welcome to the Spring Hills podcast. My name is Brennan.
Welcome.
And then we have Andrea here. So we're doing things a little bit interesting today. We're going to be interviewing Garett. He obviously can't interview himself. So.
I could have done it.
You could have.
You could, but
I'm not going to.
It might be a little conceited, and I don't know if that's a look you want.
Yeah.
So
this will be better.
So did you pick out a theme song for me? Because if anybody's listened to this, they know that the theme song. So you got something special for me?
Yeah, but I don't.
Great.
I don't actually know if people are going to expect it. So
okay. Yeah, well, maybe after they hear the theme song and then they hear more about me, maybe they'll understand it.
Yeah,
might work. Okay, go ahead, guys. I'll try not to step on your interviewing.
Great, sounds good.
So wait. I'm already going to step on your interviewing.
Wow, so no way.
That
That's
lasted
impossible.
no time
There's
at all.
no way for
It
you
lasted
not to
4 seconds. No,
it was not even 4 seconds.
What we're doing is we're doing
all
the one-on-one
you do is
interview.
interrupt people. That's all you do is interrupt.
That's
me.
why you tell me that I remind you of your daughter.
That's true.
It's true. I remind you of a child, apparently. No, what I was just going to say was the one-on-one interviews. If you've listened to these before, it's not one-on-one, though. This is Andrea. You need to introduce yourselves. That was my point.
Oh, it's true. We
Give some context of who you guys are.
They don't just know.
Nope.
I mean, our voices are pretty famous.
Yeah, I feel like our episode was the most liked
Oh, yeah.
episode.
You know what? It was the first worship podcast, Beyond the Stage, Brennan and Andrea.
Yeah.
So this is Andrea, Burgess, and Brennan Pryor. So they're going to interview me, and yeah, go ahead, guys. Again, I'll try not to step on it.
Great.
Sure.
Even though I've already done it twice.
Yeah, take two. Yeah, so we'll start off with some pretty easy stuff. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your family life growing up? Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
So I'm from Turlock, California, the Central Valley, which, Brennan, I know you're from also.
Yes, I am.
John Knapp is also from the Central Valley. Cowtowns, as we like to say.
Yes.
So Turlock, California, where it's very hot. Today, actually, during staff meeting, John Knapp and I were blamed for the heat over the last 3 years here in Sonoma County, that we brought it with us from the Central Valley.
That's where it came from.
Yeah,
that
so
explains it.
That's our fault. Anyways, yeah, so Turlock, California. I was born and raised there. Lived there except for in college. I lived there my entire life. I think, you know what? No, when I was like 3, we lived in Colorado, but I don't really remember that. But yeah, so Turlock, I got 2 siblings. I'm the youngest. I'm the baby. My brother is a school administrator in Sacramento. My sister is, her and her husband run a physical therapy clinic or whatever you call it in Turlock. They're in Turlock. So I'm a pastor's kid my whole life. My dad was in ministry from the time, I think before he had any kids, he was in ministry. So like, that's all we know, is waking up at 6 a.m. on Sundays to get to church. Because he was actually a worship pastor for a lot of his ministry career. And then he was a youth pastor as well. So, which, as you'll find out, I'm sure, I was a youth pastor. That was how I started. So, yeah. So that's a little bit about it. I don't know. What else do you want to know?
Yeah, what kind of kid were you? Were you
my
always
goodness.
following the rules all the time?
No, I didn't follow rules.
I know.
There's no rules. The rules could not hold me down. So this will explain. I was the kind of kid that would push the limit as far as you could without being like getting in a ton of trouble.
Right.
So one of my dad's favorite stories to tell is when I was in junior high, there was, the way that our schedule worked was my language arts class was 2 periods long. So I would be in that class extra long with this teacher. Now, in 7th grade, my teachers hated me, and I was at a really large junior high. So there was 2,000 kids at our junior high. So very large school, and these teachers despised me in class. They all really liked me out of class, but they hated me in class. So in 8th grade, they had told this language arts teacher, Mrs. Bonet, and I know that there's no way on earth that she's going to hear this, but she would probably laugh at this. When I was in 8th grade, I was the class clown. I was very vocal. I basically was just like, everybody pay attention to me. Not in like a bad way. It was just kind of like, you guys can laugh out loud. You guys are laughing silently.
Well, I don't want to interrupt
right.
you either.
It sounds right.
This is very important because I do think you are currently still a class clown.
Sure.
So.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what happened was this. I had this, I had this tendency to interrupt, which we already know.
No way.
Right.
And
Correct.
during the first, month, 6 weeks of class, my teacher, Mrs. Bonet, hated me, did not like me whatsoever. And she, during the back to school night, she had all of our parents in this class, and we were the last class of the day every day. And she sat all the parents down, and she said, I hate this class.
Oh, no.
Your kids are the worst class that I've ever taught. I dread this time of day every day.
It's pretty bold.
Wow,
Okay?
that
She
is
was
quite a statement.
Now I wasn't there.
And you
This
were
is-
like the
this is-
ringleader of this class.
and then she doesn't know whose parents are who in there. My dad raises his hand and says, is there an instigator? And she said, Garett Elliott. And he said, I'm Garett's father. I'll be sitting in class with you guys for the next 2 weeks.
no,
Okay.
he sat
no.
in class.
No, he didn't,
Oh.
because he came home livid. Like you've had detentions, you've gotten in trouble for being the goofball, whatever, but this is too far now. You've got a teacher that despises you. The other teacher that he had a few experiences with, he got a call from my band teacher when I signed up for band in junior high. And he said, you can't let your kid be in band. I don't want him in my class.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
What were you doing? What?
I was just disruptive. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't, it was just that I would.
That does sound
So were you
right.
just like cracking jokes in the middle of like the lessons and stuff?
No,
or-
it wasn't even that. It was just like I would make noise. Like I couldn't sit still.
What kind of noises?
Well, in band, I mean, I was a
Oh,
drummer,
okay, well,
so
that's
like
fair.
I had a gong. Don't
You
give
were a drummer in
Don't give
band.
12-year-old Garrett a gong.
We all
make
saw
a
you
joke,
during
I'm
a
getting that gong.
Little Drummer Boy. We know how
That's
you like
true.
the
I love
drums.
it. That was So so Miss Bonet, she every semester there is an award that they give out to one student, and it's called the Top Tiger Award. Okay, and
the top tiger.
and it's chosen. Each teacher gets to pick one student out of all of their classes. Okay, and so my dad said, Garrett, I'm going to come sit in class. I said, Dad, give me 2 weeks to make her like me. And so 2 weeks later, my dad, he told her, he said, I'm going to give him 2 weeks, and then in 2 weeks I'll re-meet with you. And so 2 weeks later, he
You
goes
won
and
her
she
over.
said, I love your son. This is just 2 weeks later.
Wait, so how did you change so quickly? How did you do that?
From
You
my
wooed
memory,
her.
now this is 20 years ago, but from my memory, it was I became her protector. So when kids were messing around, kids were goofing off, I was the one to get them to stop talking and pay attention.
That's
And so-
quite
Interesting.
that's a quick
That's
turnaround.
I was
180.
motivated. So at the end of the semester, I got
Top
the top
tiger.
tiger
Wow.
from
I
that
knew it.
teacher that told me 3 months earlier that she hated my guts.
Maybe
So that
she saw you
does that
trying
tell
so
you
hard.
what kind of kid I was?
A little bit.
I do have a question
Yeah.
because that I wanted to ask later, but it feels right now. So you were homeschooled though for a little bit.
Yes.
So do you think that plays into it? Like you finally had an audience or a crowd. You're like
an
with the
audience or a
people.
crowd. Let's see.
You're a social
so-
butterfly.
Attention starved.
Okay, so yes, I was homeschooled from 1st through 4th grade. I was social. My dad being a pastor, I was still around people at church. He was a pastor of not a huge church, but a bigger church. So there's plenty of friends. I started public school in 5th grade and immediately was just like, people, and had I begged my parents to let me go to public school. Both my brother and sister were homeschooled until junior high, and I was like, get me there sooner. So then
Were you disruptive in class at home?
No, so my mom just learned how to motivate me. That was really all it was. So I did all my schoolwork. I did it well. That way I could go play basketball, and
Yeah.
I would just be outside the rest of the day. So that was basically homeschool. I think I was I'd have to ask my mom. Maybe I wasn't. I don't know. It's a little different than what the kids now with homeschooling, but there wasn't the technology
Yeah.
and stuff.
That's
so it
true.
was like
Very different.
It is very.
I was going to go outside and play basketball and hockey, and that was pretty much.
So
that was
that's
what I was
actually
gonna do.
that's actually a great segue.
Thank you.
Tell us about. Obviously, people know you're a sports guy.
Yes, sports
Good job.
guy.
So tell us about some of the sports. Obviously, you mentioned hockey. You mentioned basketball.
Hockey actually was the sport that I loved the most. That was like my dream was to play hockey.
Wow.
Now,
I don't think I've ever
But
heard you talk
wanted
about
to,
hockey.
You wanted
Well,
to
it
keep
was-
your teeth.
ironically, I lost all my teeth in basketball. So
so that worked out well.
Never mind.
I loved the Mighty Ducks movies, and that
Me
was what.
too.
Yes, and that's why I was like, I want to play hockey. And so there was this roller hockey league in Turlock, and I played in that for a few years. And I was, I don't know, I was young, but I think I was pretty good. I scored a lot of goals, but it was basically like I wanted to go play hockey. And then that league shut down, and that's where I shifted back to basketball.
Oh, okay.
So I am a very good skater, which is always surprising when people actually see me on ice skates. They're like, "Oh, you know how to skate?"
Man,
Like
I
I
wish I
do.
could ice
Yes.
skate.
I'm also, fun fact, with ice skates on, I'm like 6'9".
I was going to say
So-
that's
true.
like really tall
huge. Yes.
skater. That's
Yes.
probably
Yeah.
why.
So yeah, that was then basketball became my thing, and that
Yeah.
was what I just played all through. I didn't focus on any other sports after about 5th grade. It was like basketball was all I was going to do.
Why did you
So-
like basketball?
Oh man, I don't even know how to answer that.
I mean, like more than other sports. Was it just like more accessible?
Well,
'cause you're tall?
I wasn't good at baseball.
Oh.
So I was good on the defensive end. I could not hit at all. Like when I was playing Little League, I was the last guy. I was hitting in the
It's
9
hard.
spot. I think there was one time where my coach told me I had the most strikeouts in the league.
Oh, no. Was that supposed to be encouraging or like what?
Well, and he thought so, and that
Maybe.
made me never want to play baseball again. I was just like, fine, I won't play then.
Encouraged you to play
so
something else.
I
Yeah.
just focused on basketball from there. Football, I was just never interested in. Soccer, I just didn't care. I also didn't want to be outside in 110-degree weather.
Yeah.
So-
smart.
yeah.
Inside basketball was a winter sport. I liked that.
Yeah.
Being in a gym, the sounds,
Yeah.
the squeaky shoes, the
squeaky
ball
shoes.
bouncing.
Did you have the pants though? The
The
button
tearaway-
up
The tearaway
yeah,
pants?
The tearaway
Of
pants?
course I did. What kid didn't?
I
Of
don't know.
course.
I don't know.
Yeah, the tearaway pants were a big deal.
Those
when
were
you-
such a big deal.
Those were huge, yeah.
Played basketball for 1 year, and
I
and,
cannot picture that.
Well, it's
I played
probably,
basketball too.
It's probably a good
I-
thing you didn't because I was horrible.
I'm sure you were.
But I did have the tearaway pants, so at least I did one
So
thing
you-
right.
You looked the
then
part.
you fit right
Exactly.
in.
I
You fit
didn't
right
have
in.
the tearaway pants. That's probably why I wasn't good.
Oh,
Actually,
yeah,
remember,
yeah,
I-
you needed
Yeah.
those.
That's the
I
only
made
reason.
one basket the entire season.
Oh, you were that kid.
I was that kid.
Yeah.
And
So
I
and I know
over-celebrated.
that this is going to be probably mentioned. I have a friend named Richie, and Richie I talked into. Now Richie is like I'm going to make him listen to this. He probably won't, but I'm going to try to make him listen to
should.
it. I talked to. He was a big football player. I shouldn't say big football player. He's not a big guy. He's a smaller guy. But I talked him into playing basketball his senior year of high school, and he scored one bucket all year, and everybody in the crowd went crazy because people like Richie, so he scores, and everybody goes nuts, and he literally quit after that. Okay, he didn't
Quit while
want to
I'm
play
ahead.
Like, get
anymore.
it.
He was
Come
like,
on.
I don't want to be that kid because he was like, I mean, he was a star football player, so now he's like the 15th guy on the bench for basketball. He scores one basket, everyone goes crazy. He's like, I don't want to be this kid. I'm quitting, and he just never showed up again.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Well, and I relate because I didn't
Yeah.
play again after.
Yeah.
'cause
It's
just-
not fun.
No.
It's not fun
it's not.
if you don't. Yeah.
That was the big thing with me. If I wasn't good at it, and it's still, I mean, I'm not totally that way, but if I'm not good at it, I'm like, this isn't fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Andrea, as you know, we've talked about the Enneagram numbers. I want to have fun.
Yeah, it's all about having
Just
fun.
have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Do you still play any sports?
yeah, so I play basketball just in open gyms and stuff. I
Yeah.
play basically just I take it easy
Yeah.
because I've had too many. And as I
Yeah.
mentioned, got my teeth knocked out when I was younger. I have 4 fake teeth from basketball. I don't like getting injured rolling ankles. I broke my back at one point.
Ugh.
And now that was prior to having kids. And now with kids, I'm like, you know what? There's more important things in life.
Then
Don't wanna
this.
be
So I
old,
play
man.
basketball now. Right now with COVID and stuff, I haven't played in a long time.
Sure.
But I do as much as I can. I'll play.
And you played all through college
Well, no,
Right,
not all
no?
through college.
because of the injury?
No. So I played through high school, and I had started. I went to Modesto Junior College, and I was going to play there. And then that was actually the reason I didn't stay there was because of a conflict I had with the coach. Plus, I did not want to be around those guys. It's just a party group. So I was like, I'm not going to be around this. So that was my decision there, was to take that semester off. And then I went down to Azusa, where I walked on intended to play there for the rest of college, and ended up getting really sick after my sophomore year before I ever was really involved in it, and had to move home because I went from 195 pounds to 155 pounds in
Whoa.
a
Yeah.
month.
No good.
So I had
Whoa.
it was mono and just, the chronic fatigue of mono and stuff.
Yeah.
You can't eat,
Yeah.
you can't do anything. And then by the time I was better, I had my tonsils out and was recovered, I just couldn't keep up anymore.
Yeah.
It wasn't possible. I went down to the CSU in Turlock,
Uh-huh.
which I had been recruited by, and I would have been able to play there as a freshman in college, no problem. But at that point, I went down and practiced with him, and it was just like, nope,
No.
can't do this anymore. So then from that point on, it just became recreational. Like we do intramural leagues and city leagues and stuff like that. And I had a group of guys we played with for like 5 years. And so I still got to play, but never really panned out the way that I wanted it to with college basketball.
I want to know more about Richie.
Okay.
I've never heard you talk about him before.
Yeah,
actually.
Brennan said that earlier too. He was like, who is this guy?
Who is Richie?
Who is this guy? I really hope he listens to this.
Well, he has to now.
Richie.
We've name dropped him like 5 times
really
already.
Well,
so.
and the reason why it says here that there's a unique friendship with Richie is because we are 30. I'm 33. He's 35. There has not been more than a day or two that's gone by in any one chunk of time where we haven't talked to each other. So we are constantly
that's
talking to each other. Everybody's got their best friend or whatever. There's kind of a connection, I think, and it's built around our humor. We have the exact same sense of humor. If it's funny to him, it is funny to me. So like if I find something funny, I will send it to him. He will think it's funny. There's no doubt. Like I'm like, he will laugh at this. And then basically through our childhood, we were in small groups together. We played some sports together, even though he was good at different ones. And I talked him into playing basketball. I don't know. So with Richie, it's kind of hard to explain exactly.
How'd you meet him? When did you become friends?
I think I was 8 when I met him. So his grandma was my Awana leader. Do you guys know Awana?
Yeah.
No, what is that?
So it's like a midweek program for first through I think 6th graders. Okay. Maybe it goes. Maybe more than that. But that was when I did it, and it was like I think I was in 3rd grade. His grandma was my Awana leader, and he had just moved in with her from Oregon or something. So then I met him there, and then we ended up at the same school, and then just from that point on, by the time he was in 7th grade, I was in 6th grade. We were inseparable. It was like you didn't see, like if there was ever a birthday party, he and I are showing up together.
Yeah.
Like that's what's going on. And the funny thing is that as we got a little older, I kept getting taller. He did not. So when you see me and Richie standing next to each other, you don't expect us to be, oh, you guys are buddy. Yeah, he's bald. And
Poor Richie. Way to throw him under the bus.
No, see,
Richie, I don't blame you if you stop listening right now.
No, he'll think it's funny. He'll just text me. I mean, we have a little bit of an insult relationship where we'll just insult each other.
That's your humor.
Well,
completely out of love. So yeah, Richie. There's some stuff with Richie where it's like we held each other accountable to some things, and we were the reason why we switched schools in high school, which was mainly a spiritual reason of like we needed to get out of the public school and went to a private school, and it helped me a ton. I'd have to ask him a little bit more of like what the effect was with him, but it was that kind of stuff where it was like because we had each other, we were more willing to make that move together, just things like that. So it was just, I don't know, we were inseparable and good friends for a long time now.
Yeah.
We were roommates in college.
Oh, nice.
I love that.
Yeah, at
That's
Azusa.
cool.
So yeah,
That's awesome.
Really cool.
You mentioned that spiritual decision. So talk a little bit about your faith walk, kind of how that went from your childhood to now.
Did Andrea's thumbs up for your question distract you from your question?
I was just like,
Yeah, just a little bit, but it was also really reinforcing. So I was just
really
like,
good
thanks.
at interviewing.
Positive reinforcement. So talk about what
like that, like your
just
faith
my
walk.
relationship with Christ when I was a kid.
Yeah, and up until now, you don't have to go into everything, of course, but just like how did that look? What was that process like for you?
I was, as I said before, I was a pastor's kid, so I was in church my whole life. I remember very specifically the scenario of when I asked my parents, like, what does it mean to be a Christian and ask Christ in your heart? I don't remember how old I was. I'd have to ask my mom. I think I was probably 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't know how much I really understood the decision. And that's often, that's, my kids now.
Totally.
They ask, my kid's 5, and he says, like, well, Jesus lives in my heart now, and that kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. I don't know if he really understands what Christ did for him yet, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I was very interested in memorizing, like Awana. I was very interested in memorizing Bible verses. This actually gives you another good glimpse into what I was like as a kid. My Awana leader, when I was in 4th grade, he told my dad, he's like, your kid is so disruptive that I don't know if I can. I can't teach, and I can't run this group with your kid. So my dad comes to me and he says,
"What were you doing?"
Garett.
Like,
my dad comes to me and he says, "Garett, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, he told me I had 3 chances before I got in trouble.
So I used them all
So
up.
I use them all up." And so my
is
dad's just like,
valid.
"Oh, that's exactly the problem. Is you gave him a line and you showed him where the line was, and he's going to go to that line." So that was basically what I was like.
That's funny.
But anyways, yeah. So I was really good at memorizing verses. It was I was excited about that. I mean even now just memorizing things is easy for me. It's with most things anyway. Yeah, so I, in junior high, got to be a little more serious about understanding what it meant to follow Christ. High school, I think there was times where I could feel myself being pulled towards a more, kind of the party. Like my decision in high school that I mentioned was I was at a really big public school. So we were the 3rd largest public school in California my freshman year. Then my sophomore year I went to this basketball camp, and it was kind of a weird situation where they didn't have enough dorm rooms. This is at Santa Clara. So we didn't have enough dorm rooms for the basketball team. So my team got put in a hotel. And then, and you're...
Uh-oh.
Yes. So, and here I am. I'm 14 years old. I'm in a hotel with a bunch of... Or no, I'm sorry, 15 years old. I'm in a hotel with a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds because I'm playing with the varsity team.
Yeah.
And 17, 18, 19-year-olds. And there's the coaches are on one side of the hotel and the players are on the other. So there's literally no chaperone. There's no adults around. They were doing whatever they wanted to do. And that was basically me. I'm like, guys, we have a game at 7:30 a.m.
Yeah.
And so me and one of my teammates, we literally just locked our hotel room door, went to bed, and they stayed up and I'm not exactly sure what was going on, but it was
don't even
it's
wanna
probably
know.
best.
Yeah.
not stuff that I wanted to be involved in. And so after that camp, I had gone to it was put on by Hume Lake, but it was down in Ventura. It was like a extension of Hume Lake summer camps. So when I went there happened to be a bunch of kids from this other school, Turlock Christian, that were at the camp with us. So Richie and I became really good friends with a couple of them, and as we were getting closer to them, they're like, "You guys should come to Turlock Christian." And we're like, "No." And I'm just thinking, no, I'm at one of the biggest schools in California. I'm playing varsity as a sophomore.
Yeah.
Like, I want to play basketball in college. Like, that was my only thought.
Yeah.
A couple weeks later, I really just felt, and like I had gone to those basketball camps. My coach was telling me, he's like, basically kind of constructing the team around me for the next 3 years, because it was like, the seniors are going to be leaving. And now we don't have that many young guys. So this is going to be, you're going to be the one that's going to be here for the next 3 years.
Wow.
You'll be the centerpiece.
Yeah.
And so I went over to his house. He's a really good guy. Juan Alaniz, again, probably won't listen to this, but really appreciate Juan, because I went and sat at his house and I told him my decision that I'm going to leave Turlock High and I'm going to go to Turlock Christian. And as the coach, I was kind of expecting him to be really disappointed in me.
Yeah.
But as a Christian and as a pastor himself, he was very supportive of it, which was really big to me,
That's
just
awesome.
that I had that support. And then, of course, I had so much fun playing basketball at Turlock Christian. It wasn't, I knew I was giving up any sort of opportunity for basketball to be a real thing, because Turlock Christian was a really small school.
Yeah.
And we weren't, we were good for the teams we were playing, but it wasn't like we were some great team, even though we're like, oh, we went undefeated in league for 2 years. It's like, yeah, but your league is terrible. So maybe if you played in a tougher league, you wouldn't have been as good. But yeah, so the decision there was Richie and I had decided to go to Turlock Christian to get away from, I knew I was going to be impressionable. So like, if I was going to be around these guys for the next 3 years of my life, I was going to become a party kid.
Yeah.
And so I was going to be like, hey, if this is how I'm going to get attention, I'll do it, that kind of thing. So that was the decision I made. My sister actually was already at that school, the Christian school. My dad was a Bible teacher there, so it wasn't really that much of a stretch.
Sure.
But then we made that decision, and I think it was one of the best decisions I made. I look back at that and I go, I can't believe I made that decision as a 14-year-old or 15-year-old.
Well, I don't know how many teenagers would be like, yeah, let me give up what I want to go do this. Like that's pretty unheard of for the most part, I would say.
Well, and then how many people are at Turlock High? I liked being around that many people. So then going to a school where I had, I've been homeschooled. I went to public school where I graduated 8th grade with 1,000 kids, and then graduated high school with like 34. So
That's
like
crazy.
A lot less attention.
vast
Yeah.
differences in like
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
the schools were like. But I loved I had nothing bad to say about my years at Turlock Christian. It was great.
What? So your dad taught Bible there?
He taught Bible there. Yeah, he never was my teacher. He was
Okay.
always, so the year that he would have been my teacher was the year I was at Turlock High School.
Was he the youth pastor when you were in the youth group?
Yes.
Or, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So he was there like a lot.
He experienced experienced Richie and Garrett
So-
and had plenty of times where he had to remove
where
us
you were
from the
distracting
room.
people. You're being
Separate you two.
disruptive.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was a youth pastor and a worship pastor. So he was the youth pastor up until I was like 15 or 16. Then he stepped out of that and became the I don't know if his title was like I think he was the senior associate pastor after that. So he did worship, and then he was the kind of what Garrett Ward does here with Brett. And I mean, it's kind of combined, but yeah.
How did that affect your relationship with the Lord, or like you wanting to be in ministry, or
So
how did that all come about?
Yeah, my dad and I always have had a really good friendship. Like he used to make the joke all the time that he and I grew up together, and because he's very much a goofball himself, and I mean he was built to be a youth pastor, at least for the time
I
he
love
was.
that.
He's now, I guess he's at Turlock Christian again. He's running one of the pods where like the kids watch the Zoom classes or whatever in the
right.
room, and he's just the chaperone of the room.
Oh my gosh.
And my brother the other day is just like, yeah, I think he's just like playing putt-putt with the kids. And I'm like, of course he is.
That's amazing.
Of course he is. So yeah, my dad and I have always had a really close friendship. And so I've always really appreciated what he did, even if it wasn't, I used to make the joke all the time, like, Garrett, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like, I either want to be the worst basketball player in the NBA, because
Sure.
let's be realistic.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have, if I was going to get there, I wasn't going to be any better.
Dream. Yeah.
I wasn't going to be any better than the worst. So I'm like, because then you just get paid a lot of
Yeah.
money to
that's
watch
not a bad-
basketball.
That sounds
That's not too
amazing.
bad.
I don't see it. Well, I
And
mean,
you
if you like
travel.
sports, it sounds amazing.
Right. Yeah. Travel the world, and that. So I was like, I'm either going to be the worst basketball player in the NBA or probably a youth pastor. Like just
Yeah,
follow
okay.
my dad's footsteps, which I literally have to the T.
Yeah.
Youth pastor, then
Wow.
became a worship pastor. And so I think like having the good relationship that I had with him made it to where that was a good impact. I think had he and I not gotten along,
Yeah.
I probably would have been a little more resistant to it. But because I appreciated him so much as a dad, like he never missed a basketball game. He was there for everything.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't like, he didn't coddle me or anything. Like if I got in trouble, it was like, yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Like you did it. And
Yeah.
that's, you got to deal with the consequences now, So it wasn't like he was overprotective or anything. But if I got in trouble, I had a good enough relationship with him to tell him like, hey man, I screwed up and now I got suspended. And he's just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, you're suspended. All right, fine. You're grounded from your car for the time you're suspended. I'm like, okay, thanks. There was, So anyway, so the fact that I had a good relationship with him, I think was helpful in the fact that I appreciated his ministry,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and I loved being part of his youth group. He was a great youth pastor too. That was another thing. I
That's
saw how he got to take groups to Disneyland, and I'm like, I want to
That's
go
awesome.
to Disneyland as an
Yeah.
adult.
Yeah.
Oh,
And call it ministry.
Right.
So that was definitely something that I never did do that as a youth pastor, but I was all for it, man. It was cool.
Yeah.
that's cool. What was your first job in ministry?
Oh, so I volunteered in ministry
Sure.
in high school doing like the band stuff, like
Mhm.
playing guitar and stuff and singing. I didn't like worship music growing up. If you remember worship music
Well,
in the 90s,
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
a really
not good.
No.
there's a rough
It was rough.
It's a rough patch in there.
Yeah.
And that was when my dad was a worship pastor. So I really didn't like the music they had. And then that you had the guys like Tomlin and Redman
Mm-hmm.
and the Hillsong guys.
Mhm.
They all from the early 2000s up through, 2007, 2008, they really bridged the gap between like terrible sounding worship music to like, hey, this is actually pretty good. You could put on
Yeah.
like a fun worship concert with this music now.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that made it easier to be part of worship ministry. But I started as a youth pastor, interim youth pastor at a church in Denair. Now, Denair is a tiny, tiny town next to Turlock. And
never even
I've
heard of it.
never
I'm from
heard
the
of it.
I'm from
Yeah.
the Central Valley, and I've never heard of that place.
That's why I looked at you like, do you know?
yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It's small. That was where my parents were both born and raised. They graduated from Denair High School. It's much smaller now. I actually coached basketball there later on. Before I moved to Santa Rosa, I was coaching there. But I started in youth ministry just as an interim part-time youth pastor of a really small church. And I ended up, I think 6 months after the interim was over, they hired me on for like a year or whatever, and then they just kept me around. Caitlin and I got engaged in 2011, and when I got engaged, I went to the church and I basically said, like, I want to be full-time and would do worship and youth. So that was what I ended up doing. So I fell into worship ministry. And when I say I fell into it, I'm not joking. There was another guy there that was the worship leader, and there was just a Sunday he just didn't show. He just didn't show up.
Just didn't show up.
Now again, it's a small church. It's not like like if I just didn't show up here at Spring Hills,
yeah.
it would be more noticeable. No, he didn't show up, and I'm like, I got my guitar in my truck. I'll just go grab my guitar, and like I know a couple things, but it was like youth group campy songs that I knew, like Stirrin' Me. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
So definitely a campy sounding song. And it was really bad. I mean, I was in a bunch of it was really bad. I was in a bunch of like punk rock bands growing up, so it's all just like chunky power chords.
Oh my gosh.
And then just kind of the whiny punk voice.
Yeah.
So anyways, then he didn't show up the next week, and so I did it again. And then I was like, I'm going to start working on this to make it a little bit better.
Yeah.
So then I started to learn some different songs and got a little bit, better at worship guitar over the span of the next, 6 months, 7 months. And it became like, hey, I like doing this. This is fun. And then I had Easter 2010. No, I had 2011 because Caitlin and I were almost engaged. I had a band come because it was, again, small church. We didn't have a full band. But I had a band. I had a bunch of dudes come and play Easter service with me.
Oh, that's awesome!
And I had so much fun playing with a full band.
So fun,
And I was like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
This is more fun than youth ministry. And I was like, I was kind of getting over youth ministry. Like I was not built for it. It was fun for a little while, but I was just like, nope. I'm done with this. And so then I planted a church with my dad in 2000, or my parents planted a church, and I was part of it. 2013 or 14, and that was where I basically took the step to being I'm the music pastor, and that was where I really tried to move forward with my worship leading abilities. So that was basically you said how I started in ministry. That
no,
was
I like that. That's where I wanted you to go with.
That was the full story.
That was the
basically.
saga. Yeah.
No.
So, yeah.
It was a saga.
So just real quick, you mentioned you were in a couple punk bands.
I was. We were terrible.
What were the names of those bands?
You don't want to know?
I do.
No.
We do want to know. We do want to know.
Oh, what? They probably weren't
appropriate?
No, nothing inappropriate. Of course not. No, and Richie was the bassist.
Fantastic.
And we had lots of drummers because no one could keep up with me. We literally would drink like 3 Red Bulls before we'd go on stage.
Oh my gosh.
And then we were just
idea.
Well, and we were hyper already.
Yeah.
We didn't need Red Bulls.
No.
So it was just like our whole thing was like, well, we're not any good, so let's just be entertaining. That was that was what it was. So we talked to each other in the microphones and like in between songs, say things that only we thought were funny, which made us laugh because nobody else thought it was funny.
Everyone else
Which
was
then
just
would
looking
just
at
be
you.
like entertaining. These guys are making fools of themselves. And then our friends all thought it was funny and whatever. So we were terrible musicians. Or songwriters, I should say. And but we had a lot of fun doing it. But names of the bands, I think one was called Lost Boy.
That's amazing.
Which was pre-Fallout Boy. We did not know that they
Lost
exist,
Boy.
but it was just Lost Boy. And I think the reason was because we just the Peter Pan Lost
I was
Boys.
going to say, like,
It's a
Peter
nice
Pan.
mix of Lost Prophets and Fallout Boy.
Sure, yeah.
I like that.
I think, I don't know, another one. I think we Almost Heroes or something.
Oh, that's a good
Almost
one.
hate. I like that.
I don't know. There was probably some decent ones and then some really bad ones, and then I don't know why we kept changing our band name. I'm not sure what that accomplishes.
I feel like that's like a pretty stereotypical like teenage band thing.
Sure.
Though, is like your band name changes a bunch.
Yeah. And I think when we got into college, it was like we went from being more like poppy punk to we got a little emo.
Yeah, there we go.
So, yeah.
There it is.
Anyways.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. Thanks for sharing for that.
Sure.
I really, that was very important to me. So
If Richie does listen to this, he's going to be like, how dare you forget about all our band names?
Oh, Richie, he's not going to listen because
Yeah.
you told everyone
Sorry.
he's bald. I would like to know now a love story about how you met Caitlin.
It's magical. I met Caitlin after I had moved home. We actually, when I got sick and moved home from Azusa, I was starting at CSU Stanislaus. Well, that was her freshman year. So I met her some point during her freshman year because I was over at my mentor's house. His name's Kurt. And I was really good friends with his nieces and his daughters. We all went to school together and we were good friends. And their house was like the hangout place.
Oh, yeah.
So Caitlin was part of this group of friends that they had from CSUS, and they were hanging out over at Kurt's house. And I was there hanging out with Kurt, who's the adult, right? Who also was mayor of Turlock for 18 years.
oh wow.
So I was there. I
love that so much.
No, Turlock's a big town. Like it's 90,000 people or something. So, but yeah,
It's
so
just
he's
funny that I'm just picturing you sitting there with the mayor.
with the mayor of Turlock. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Oh, hello, children. I don't know.
I was there hanging out with Kurt, and I got introduced to a few new people from CSUS, and Caitlin was one of them. She was there with another guy who I thought she was dating. Found out later on she was not.
Oh.
But I do remember very specifically being like, ooh, she's cute. Oh, she's got a boyfriend. All right. And then hung out with the mayor of Turlock.
Because no big deal.
Because it was just, no big thing. So that was like 2007, 2008 was the school year. So sometime in that range or whatever. 2010, she actually graduated really early from college, and we did this like barbecue graduation party for a bunch of our friends that were all graduated now. And she was there, and her and I had talked very briefly, but at this point, I was working in ministry and I was preaching the next day. So I was like, hey, I got to go and work on my sermon. And of course, Caitlin's like, oh, you're a pastor. Cool. And that she appreciated that, right? Then a few months later, she came to one of our intramural basketball games, and there was I'm not proud of this, but it's part of the story. Basically, we were playing in a game where we were playing against a team with a bunch of our friends. There was a play where I stole the ball, heading down the court. I jumped really high. So I dunked all the time. So I went up to dunk, and one of my friends pushed my legs out from underneath me, and I fell like on my neck right in front of Caitlin.
Oh, that's no good.
And it made me so mad, obviously, that I got up and I was like looking at him like, what are you doing, man? You're going to break my neck.
Yeah.
And he said basically like, don't try to dunk on me. I'll do it again, whatever, which made me really mad.
Ooh.
Sure.
So I did not react in kind. I was very aggressive. Now, everybody held both of us back to where there wasn't actually like a fight.
Sure.
But I got kicked out of the game, obviously. My dad, this shows you who my dad is. He, of course, he and I did martial arts together for a long time. So he kind of just wanted to see me fight the guy.
So my dad, I wanted to see you throw a punch.
My dad is standing over in the corner of the gym with his phone out recording it.
That's amazing.
And so, and like,
I like
know
your dad even more now.
I know that he was just waiting. He's like, I want to see Garett deck this dude. So anyways, I felt so terrible. Now I wasn't cursing or anything, but it was definitely not one of my proudest moments.
Sure.
And I had started messaging people and, calling them and apologizing to my friends for the way that because I was a youth pastor. I felt I really did was just like, I should not have reacted that way.
Sure,
Like that wasn't good. And so I started apologizing to people. Caitlin was one of the few people that was like, are you okay? Because obviously like landing on your neck, she knew it was, and we started talking that way. And I just started getting interested in her.
Yeah.
And her roommate was one of my teammates, was dating one of my teammates. So there was like an easy,
there you go.
So I told him, I'm like, hey, what's her deal? And so they set us up basically. They were like, they had the situation where they're like, hey, everybody come over, watch the World Series. It was when the Giants won the World Series in 2010. And I know you don't care, but you knew about that.
He pointed to me, by the way, just so everybody knows.
Brennan does not. Yeah, sports.
Yay, go sports!
Not
Score a point.
not the one who's married to a former professional baseball player.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But anyway, so they set up this scenario where all of us were hanging out in the same place, and then that night I asked her for a number, asked her out. We literally got married a year later. So we got engaged 7 months later. And
That's
then
what
married.
I was going to ask. You stole
Yeah.
my question.
It was it was fairly fast.
Yeah.
But
When you know, you know.
when you know, you know.
And you have children?
We do. We have a little bit of children.
a little
Just
bit.
a little bit.
We
Just a little bit.
we
of
just have a
children.
little bit of children. 5 and a 3-year-old.
They're so
The
cute.
5-year-old is just like Caitlin, and the 3-year-old
They're so
is my
cute.
clone. The 3-year-old, and he is every bit of a disruptive goofball.
He's going to get detention, too.
I think before we move on, we've talked a little bit about your ministry, getting into ministry. What about getting here to Spring Hills? How did that go?
Basically, when God's working, right? I look back at this scenario and I go, there's no way this should have happened. I had planted the church with my dad. I was the worship leader there. We had, on a good week, like 60 people at the services. So very small. I had 4 people in the band. And it was like, if they were there, they were there. If they weren't, they weren't. It wasn't like scheduling out band members. It was like, hey, you going to be there this weekend? Great. We've got a guitarist, or we don't, or a bassist. And so leading up to this point, I had just kind of been like, I don't really know what's going to happen in ministry. That I didn't really think I wasn't sure what was going to happen with the church plant. I don't know. It's just kind of a big unknown. My wife's aunt, Shelly Weber, who goes to Spring Hills, at Thanksgiving 2016, she had said, Garett, I need to talk to you about something. And she said, our worship pastor left. You should apply. And I'm like, isn't your church big? And she goes, I mean, it's like 1,500 people. And I'm like, my church is like 50 people.
Yeah.
And she goes,
Huge jump.
I think you should still apply. And I was like, all right, well, sure. I'm not really looking to move out of town, whatever. So I talked to my dad, I think the next day, probably the next day, and he just goes, you 100% turn in your resume. Like, use this as an experience.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of thinking like, well, part of me feels bad because I work with my dad, and he's now telling me to go turn in a resume somewhere. And of course, my dad, being the unfailingly supportive father, was like, they'll hire you. And I'm like, okay, sure, Dad, thanks. So then I had done one event where it was a larger event where we had a bunch of churches, kind of like citywide.
Yeah.
I had a video of me leading worship at that.
Oh, nice.
So that was the only video that I had available to send to Brett. Now, Brett had gotten my resume from Caitlin's aunt and called me like a half hour later. And I mean, you know, Brett, like, hey, Garett.
How you doing?
How you doing? Brett, Avlikiotis. So I talked to Brett for a few minutes, and immediately he was like, well, let's bring you up here and you can lead worship on it. And I'm like,
Wow.
What?
Whoa.
Yeah.
And he had told me, I'm not going to tell the rest of, and I mean, I could be misremembering this a little bit, but he told me that he wasn't going to tell the rest of the staff that we're going to, be helping make the decision of the next worship pastor, that I wasn't from a bigger church, that he didn't want them to see my resume because it was not shiny.
Right.
Sure.
So anyways, I came up here. Geraldine actually had been flown in that weekend to lead, and then they brought me up with her. So we co-led that weekend.
that's
So
cool.
it was like 5
Wow.
people.
Foreshadowing.
I know.
Well,
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So that's kind of funny, right? So I came here. It was December 2016, and it was like immediately just I thought I was going to be super nervous. I thought it was just going to be like, oh man, this is going to be a cool experience, but then like it'll be over or whatever, right? And then while we were here, Caitlin and I are just like, man, this would be so cool if we actually got to do this. And I'm still just like, there's no way. Like they're going to have other candidates for this that are far more qualified for this. And I went through the weekend with a couple of, I think we met with Brett and Eve for lunch, and then met with the staff for, I don't know, some kind of interview at Mary's that you couldn't hear anything. But so it was basically like, well, this would be great. Thanks for the opportunity. That kind of thing. And then Brett called me, I don't know, not like 3 days later or whatever, and said, want to bring you up again. And I'm like, oh, okay. So and I asked him, like, are you guys seriously considering me? And he goes, oh yeah. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I came up, And that was the weekend that I lost my voice.
Yep. I was there for that one.
So again, I, up to this point, had not really led bands, but I had led worship a ton because I was leading worship for 3 churches at this point back in Turlock. They just all met at different times, Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night.
Yeah.
So I was doing lots of services every week. So I was used to that. But when I lost my voice, it was after the Saturday night service, and it was really because I had been a little sick. And then I went and did this 2.5-hour interview where I'm talking at a big table with Kiki and Sean Winardi and Brett. Very,
I was like,
very vocal people. And I'm trying to talk
Yeah.
at the volume that they are. And I left, and it's like 11 o'clock or something like that. And I'm like, dude, I think my voice is gone. And I tried to sing in the car, and I'm like, it's gone. Like, I'm not going to be able to do this. So at like 6 a.m., I text
like anxious,
Brett.
even though I know what happened.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like,
so they actually
terrible.
called Andrea that morning, which it was your birthday.
It was my birthday.
Yeah. So, and to see if like you could come and help
Yeah.
out. Cause I text Brett at 6 a.m. and Kiki, and I said, guys, I don't really know what to do about this, but I lost my voice, and it was, I mean, there was like 4 people in the band. So it wasn't like there was another option.
Yeah.
And I said, but I'll be there. We're going to make it work. And I'm just like, very humbling because I'm like, this is going to be humiliating. There's going to be, 1,000 people here today, and I'm going to squeak through this interview worship service. Okay. Everyone obviously was extremely kind through the whole thing. We figured out thankfully I still had my lower register.
Yes.
So I just sang everything an octave lower and was able to do that somehow. I can't even believe it because it was like my voice was almost completely gone. And so after that, it was kind of like we still went out for lunch with the band, and like they kind of interviewed me with, I guess, not the whole band because you
Not
weren't
me.
here.
I wasn't there.
No, just the people that
Well,
had
it was
played
my
that
birthday.
weekend. Yeah, it was your birthday.
Maybe that's why.
I was too cool for you.
And 2 days later, Brett called me and offered me the job. And I literally was just like, you got to be kidding me.
Come on, man.
You got to be kidding me. Like a month ago, I had been like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll turn in my resume just for the experience. Now, the thing that really stands out to me in this whole scenario was the way that my dad handled it, because my dad, being the pastor of the church that I was working at, there was no hesitation on his part to be like, no, you apply. And if they offer it to you, you go. Like if God's opening a door, you go. Yeah. And I was like, but dude, that's going to leave you hanging. Like you're a small enough church as it is. Now you're losing your worship leader. And he's like, no, God's going to provide here. Yeah. If that's where he wants you, that's where you go. And so it just seemed like, I mean, that Friday, which happened to be and this is where my memory comes into, like, where it's like, you got a ridiculous memory, Garrett. So that was our anniversary, was that Friday. And Caitlin and I came up here after we had accepted, because Brett called and he said, we'd like to bring you on staff. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, great, I'm in. And like, I had no other questions. So like,
great.
When John Knapp was interviewing like 2 months later, and I had known John prior to working here.
Oh, right.
And he was asking some very specific questions, and I'm like, oh, you're asking like adult questions. Okay, I don't know the answer to those. So you're going to need to call somebody else, because I basically just said yes. So they might be paying me in chiclets. I have no clue, but I'm going. So we went up Friday, and we found a house, the house we were in over in Eureka Valley, and we looked at it, and within like, I don't know, it seemed like 2 hours, maybe it was a little longer than that, we got it.
Dang.
And then we moved in 2 weeks later, and it was just seeming like and apparently everybody was just like, you found a place that quick? I'm like, yeah, is that not normal here? And they're like, no, people, we thought you might have a hard time finding a place. So we were here 2 weeks later, and my family had moved in. So it just seemed like everything was just like stacking up to like, yeah, this is supposed to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I remember being there that first.
Yeah, you, Jerry, both had started that weekend.
Yeah, well, yes, that. But I remember the worship service where you lost your voice, because I think that was, I'd been at Spring Hills for a couple months at that point, and I was like, oh yeah, they're getting a new worship leader and stuff. And my first thought was like, man, that guy's voice is deep.
Low.
Yeah, I was like, this dude's like a country singer.
Well, and the thing is, my voice, I already have like a low voice. Yeah. Oh, that was something, one of the first questions Kiki ever asked me, and I know I mentioned this to you before. Yes. She said, so your voice sounds kind of country. Is that like your thing? And I just remember not knowing Kiki. Like, I've never met somebody like Kiki.
Yeah.
She's a pretty
very straightforward,
unique person.
Yeah.
And that was probably like the biggest transition for me was working with Kiki and Ashley, just because it was like, oh, you guys just say what you're thinking.
Yeah,
great.
it's great.
There's no like, I don't have to read into anything. If you're mad at me, you will tell me you're mad at me. I don't have to go, is that person mad at me?
Yeah.
No, they'll tell you. So like working with them was really, it was refreshing and then also kind of scary because they were not going to be afraid to say like, hey, you don't sound good on that one.
Yeah.
So you're not going to sing that song anymore.
Like, oh,
It's like, great.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
And now my skin is much thicker.
Sure.
Like I can take the criticism a little
Yeah.
better. But the transition of going from, a small church where I'm just making all the decisions just on my own to like working with not just a team, but a team that knows what they're doing and
That's
is
polished.
Yeah.
one of the things that I appreciate the most about, or not, maybe not the most, but at the moment, it was one of the things I appreciated the most was seeing that Brett planted the church and now is still leading this church, and a lot of his family is working with him. And to me, that spoke a lot about Brett as a leader, as a pastor. If you're able to work with your family, it's not easy. So like working with your family and the way that they work together so well was something I was really drawn to because I planted a church with my dad, and I know that there's, even though my dad and I have a great relationship, I know that there's struggles with that. So yeah, did that answer your question? I honestly
think so.
don't remember what your
I don't remember what your question was.
No,
either.
but yeah, and then I do remember.
No, it was just the question was actually how I got to Spring Hill.
Yeah, and I do remember my first
journey.
weekend was your first weekend, and also Jerry's.
It wasn't my first weekend.
Not your
It was
first
my
weekend.
first weekend living here.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Or no.
Your
It
first
was my
weekend
first
on
weekend on
staff.
staff. It wasn't my first
Yeah.
weekend leading here. It
Yeah,
was the
it was
first
first
one
weekend
on
on
staff.
staff.
Yes, thank you, Andrea.
Yeah. So
Appreciate that.
You're welcome. I'm here for you.
yeah,
Some random questions.
yeah. Let's do some random questions.
Bring it on.
Okay. Well, I just have a random one I just thought of. What is your favorite TV show
Oh, we're gonna do that
of all time? No, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
This could be a long conversation.
I just one.
I'll make it quick.
One favorite.
You only get one.
She just wants me to. She knows the answer.
Does she?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
It's
if
Friends.
Yeah.
Oh wait.
We did a Friends trivia together
How did I not?
Well,
Garett.
I did it. She just kind of sat there.
because he took over and just
No,
talked
I didn't.
over me.
I didn't. There was a couple people that you introduced me to that night. What was the other guy's name?
Ian.
Ian and I were.
They took over.
Yeah.
But it was great. It was fun. Because
Yeah.
I really didn't know as many answers as he did.
Andrea at the beginning to say that she could beat me in a Friends trip. She can't.
And then
No,
It's stupid.
absolutely not.
It's stupid.
It's
I have
stupid.
I have a crazy memory with movies and TV and basketball stats and just things like that.
And you've also said you've watched Friends how many times through?
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that.
Are you sure?
No, this is a Christian show.
Oh, okay.
That's embarrassing.
No, it was one of those shows. I mean, Friends was one of those first shows I think that people really started binging
Yeah.
because it
Oh,
was in
yeah.
the heyday of like the DVDs were coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And so people had them on DVD and stuff. So it was one of those things that was just constantly on in my dorm room.
Yeah.
Like my roommate was always watching them. I had them all. I worked at a bookstore when I was right out of high school. And so I had all these really good discounts that I could get on DVDs and stuff. So I had all the DVDs and
That's awesome.
that kind of deal.
You didn't read books. You just watched.
Well, you weren't allowed to. How stupid is that? I worked at a bookstore and you weren't allowed to read books there.
What?
Well,
There was so much downtime, but you couldn't read a book.
That's true. Yeah.
Like you had to
Weird.
do. I'm
you
like,
had to keep.
don't
you had
you?
to dust something?
Wouldn't I mean? I'm just thinking like, wouldn't it look good if your employees
Yeah.
were reading books that you wanted to sell to people? Like that I
Yeah.
could read this book and be like, hey, this is a good book.
I feel like that's the
No,
only
you want me to
place.
just wipe down
Right.
the counter 900 times today?
Yeah.
That's
Oh yeah,
literally
that's
what I was
I
doing.
worked at a video store and it was like that. Too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Andrea working at like a Blockbuster.
it was called the video store.
Wow, it's not even a Blockbuster. That's the best part.
Didn't even.
Oh yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
First
that's
job.
cool.
Anyway, this is not about me.
Great. Garett, you also mentioned at one point earlier your Enneagram. Or you
Yeah.
mentioned
Oh, yeah.
Enneagram. Let's talk about that. What is your Enneagram number?
Okay, so I don't know the Enneagram as well as Andrea does, and my wife is also very interested.
Oh, you're
in
big on Enneagram, huh?
I think personality
I love it.
personality tests and stuff like that are fascinating. I've done a lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
and so anytime I've done an Enneagram one, it's like I'm a 7.
Okay.
And
Which one's the 7 again?
The enthusiast.
Oh, there you go. Thanks.
I'm a 7. Also.
I want to
Are
have
you
fun. This is why Andrea and I
Wow.
get along, and why when Andrea told me that I looked stupid, that I laughed and didn't
Yeah.
go, ouch, that hurt my feeling. No,
Right.
I thought it was funny. And so like you can mock me and mimic me all
Sure.
you want. I'm one of those people that's like, as long as it's funny, I'm all for it. But if you're just doing it to be a jerk, then it's not cool. But if you're doing it to be funny, I mean, like you've been in the green room long enough to know that Jerry and I do that to each other constantly, and I think it's hilarious. So so Enneagram 7, wing 6.
Oh, you know you're a wing too.
Yes. So wing 6. That's that's where the organizational side of my personality comes from, I guess. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty organized.
Yeah, you are organized. You also like to change things around a lot, which kind of always throws me off.
True.
Like I came into the green room today and I was like, oh, so now there's another table. And
well, so what's funny about that is this probably doesn't
are.
move around as much as you guys think it does, but because you guys are only in here every now and then.
Yeah. Now, anyway.
Like, you're here, what? I mean, Brennan, you haven't been in the green room in months.
Yeah, it's been months.
So like you've probably... Well, yeah, you didn't, but we're doing the podcast now. That's why it's changed so much now. Is because we're doing the podcast in here. So yeah. Anyways,
name 5 things about yourself that people may not know. Let's
great.
do that.
Speed round, go.
That we don't know.
that you don't know.
Yeah, what do we not know?
What do
Oh,
we
geez,
not
what
know?
you don't know.
Well, it's okay. It's
Is
okay.
that harder?
It's
That's
okay.
harder.
Well, probably because you guys know me enough. To, like
that's
you guys
fine.
have spent a lot of time. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know that I took ballet when I was younger.
I did know that.
I didn't know that, but I saw it on the questions and I was like,
So
what?
it wasn't a and I've mentioned this before. I mean, a lot of people. That's not like some kind of secret, but it's silly because you go, wait, what? And it was just for a basketball. It was the basketball team I was on when I was younger, a travel team. We did ballet, and we had ballet instructor show us some of the basics to help us with agility and balance and stuff like that, which is pretty common during that like 1998, 99 era.
Yeah.
A lot of professional basketball players were doing ballet techniques.
I
I think
remember
now they
that.
just call it something different.
Bar.
yeah, probably.
Yeah, something,
Yeah.
whatever it is, but or they do
call it what
yoga,
now?
and
Or it's
Pilates,
Pilates or
and that kind of
bar.
stuff.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I can do the pretty basics of ballet. I still remember, which is silly. Let's see. I jumped off of a 95-foot cliff into a river up in Northern California. Yes. So up in McLeod,
Risky.
up near Shasta. There's it's called Fowler's, I think. Fowler's? Yeah. And it's Middle Falls or something. And it's this really cool. It's awesome. If anybody's ever been there, you know what I'm talking about. It's amazingly beautiful. But there's a ledge that you can jump off of, and we would go there. We'd be in McLeod every year for a mission trip when I was in high school. And there's this ledge that's like a 40-foot jump into this really deep river.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was safe to jump in there as long as you were not jumping onto rocks.
Right.
Well, that's
the key.
that you might get scratched up there. And I was in high school, so I'm stupid. And my friend and I, Kyle, we looked up at the very top of this mountain and we thought, well, we could jump that. And so
Why
we
not?
went up to the top of it, which is more than double what the ledge was that we had been jumping off of.
Yeah.
And we stood up there and we were like looking down and we looked at each other and we're like, we have to just do it or we're not going to do it. And so we literally just like 1, 2, 3 and jumped. And it was, I mean, I'm guessing, so we have pictures of it and we have a video of it. And like we were trying to figure out how high it was. Well, the waterfall is, depending on the height of the river or whatever, the waterfall is like a 45-foot waterfall. And it's a little more than double the waterfall.
Yeah.
So it's like a 90-foot jump and it literally ripped straight through my shoe.
Gosh.
My arm slapped the water and I had a giant bruise on my arm.
Gosh.
So yeah, that was one of those things that was like, when my family found out about that, they were like, "You're an idiot.
Yeah.
You are so stupid." But I've got
Yeah.
the picture and the pictures to prove it and the video to prove it.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's another thing.
I could never.
No, me
I
either.
did martial arts for a really long time. I did Shoshu Kung Fu and did that for a really long
Shoshu Kung
time. As far as like when I was a kid, I did it. And then I did it again as an adult to get some exercise. But I loved doing it. My dad is much further along than I am. He is, he could hurt some people. So that's something. I don't know what else to man, is there any other things? I love doing impressions. I don't know if anybody, if that's something that you guys probably know. That I don't know what to say that you guys don't know.
Well,
Those
it's
were
okay
good.
though.
Those were good ones.
You like making
That's fine.
lists?
Oh, yes.
Do you
So
really
if
like
I made a
making
list of
lists?
my favorite things to do, making lists would be on the top of that list.
Yep.
Something else about me, I am wildly competitive. I hate to lose more than I love to win. That is definitely like ingrained in me. Like,
Is this with anything? Like anything?
Probably depends
game.
on who's involved.
Sure.
Yeah.
So like if it's something where like with basketball, I hate losing. I don't want to lose. And I'm going to do anything I can to make
But
sure
are
that
you
doesn't
going to
happen.
let your kids win a game or something?
So
Are
I'm
you
not
gonna
competitive with my kids.
But even when they get older and like you can play basketball with them, are you going to go easy on
I'm going
them?
to shut
or
them
are
down.
you gonna,
No, they're not winning. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, kid.
Okay.
No.
Now we know the level.
Sorry,
of
kids.
competitiveness.
No.
Yeah.
No, but like now when we
Yeah.
play games and stuff, it's like
Well, now they're really little, but
they're super small, and so
Yeah.
we play games, and it's like
Yeah.
you're going to let your kids
Yeah.
win because it's fun. But yeah, so I am very competitive. I don't know what else to tell you guys about me.
that's good. That's
No,
good.
those are all good
I
stuff.
think you did great.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has been super fun to
I'm glad that you had fun.
take over your show here.
Hey, but I think we did a great job.
I think so,
interviewing
too.
you.
We'll see.
Yeah. Maybe we'll, take over again at some point for
Maybe.
another topic.
If you're lucky, we will.
Because, I think they're going to like us more than they like you.
Sure.
Which,
Maybe.
we can let them decide.
Yeah.
Um,
Remember,
yeah.
I am competitive, so if you
Yeah.
beat me,
Yeah.
we're not friends anymore.
Well,
I don't think that's true.
Garrett's not going to schedule me for worship services anymore after this
And
podcast.
we never saw Brennan again.
Wow. That was a little farther than I thought it would go.
Netflix documentary. So yeah, I'll do a little wrap up here just because I know.
Because you know what you're doing.
I know what
We're
I'm
so
doing.
good at it.
No, so we've been doing these one-on-one interviews purely because we want people to get to know the staff.
Yeah.
That's the goal here. I was like, well, I wasn't going to, like I said, wasn't going to interview myself. So I came to you guys. I was like, would you guys interview me? And I said, this is sort of an awkward, what did I call it? What kind of question did I call it? An arrogant question? No, a weird question.
You might have used
Sure.
arrogant.
I don't know.
Although
It felt really
disagree,
weird to
but-
say, well, you guys interview me and ask me questions about me. Like, it just is like, let's talk more about me.
Yeah.
And it just felt weird. But I appreciate you guys doing this because I
Yeah.
didn't
Of
know,
course.
wasn't sure how I was gonna pull this one off. But yeah, hopefully, as far as getting to know the staff, we've got a bunch of one-on-one interviews on the podcast feed. But I also want to say we're expanding the podcast
Ooh.
in a lot of ways. So I'm kind of excited about this. This is why I'm talking about it. Started doing the podcast back in March, right when COVID started. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to start expanding it to a lot of different topics. So we'll talk about marriage. We'll talk about parenting. We'll talk actually on Thursday, we're bringing in Patricia and Nikki, and we're going to talk about the challenges that teachers have right now. And then we're
That's
bringing
so
in
good.
also
So interesting.
with Patricia and Nikki will be Brittany, who's a mom here.
Yeah.
And she homeschools. So we're going to talk about parenting and teaching
cool.
and the struggles, try to encourage teachers and try to encourage parents during a very frustrating. Well, Brennan, you're an educator. It's like you know that it's, I mean, and Andrea, you've become an educator now
I have.
because of your kids.
You've been forced to.
I've
But my
been
point is,
forced.
we're going to try to expand into a lot more felt needs, like
That's
things
cool.
that people need
That's
to
great.
be encouraged by and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, marriage, finances, parenting. I'm going to do a series called Tough Questions,
Nice.
which is basically just like, what does the Bible say about
That's cool.
such
I
and
love
such,
that.
Yeah.
and kind of like the series that we do, the You Asked For It series that we
Yeah.
do. And then next week I'm doing an interview with Brett and Eve. It's going to be a 4-parter on the story of Spring Hills. So
I love that.
a lot of cool stuff. My point, what you made me think of this when you said we'll take over sometime. My point is, I do want to get other people that can do this, people that want to do it. I'm not going to force you to do it, but
So you're saying this was our interview?
well, not really.
Oh.
But I want to find people because if I sit here and I do an interview with somebody about a topic that I know nothing about, I'd rather have people that are, informed on that topic run the conversation, because if it's just me talking about something I'm not informed on, it's not going to be as good. So
Sure.
anyways, that's my point. So it'd be really cool, especially when it comes to like the stuff like teaching and things like that, where you're a little more, educated, no pun intended, on what that's like. I don't know what it's like to be a teacher, so I don't know the struggles that everybody's dealing with. So I'm going to interview teachers, but I'm not going to have a whole lot to say because I don't have any input. I don't know how to encourage a teacher that's frustrated right now. So I do need more people that are going to be willing to host these kinds of things. So yeah,
Great.
that was why you reminded
Awesome.
me of it. Yeah, Andrea doesn't seem like she wants to do it. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Spring Hills podcast. Don't forget, you can join us this weekend, 5:30 Saturday, 8:15, 9:30, and 11:15 on Sunday. So join us then. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Brennan and Andrea, say bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
No, better than that.
Oh, yeah, thanks for joining us.
Better than that.
That was good. Bye.